Wall Street with our financial expert Rob Black. Pretty quiet day in the markets. Dow down just 4 points right now. At least we finally had a positive week last week. The bleeding seems to have stopped from the big drop we've seen in the Dow. I guess we're all waiting for Janet Yellen tomorrow, see what the new Fed chair has to say.
Yes, and we'll get a little update on developing nations, a little update on currencies. She goes to Congress for a couple of days for a biannual speech, and a lot will come out of that. It's really her first time on stage, so we will digest every little nugget that she gives us. Some big news this weekend. Yahoo signed a deal with Yelp, is probably the story of the day. Yelp's got a lot of content. Yahoo wants to get back into search in a bigger way than they have in the past, so I think that's interesting to see CEO of Yelp, Jeremy Stoppelman, making another deal. It's a deal very similar to the one that they have with Apple to be integrated into the maps of Apple, but this is more into the search of Yahoo.
And speaking of Apple, it looks like Carl Icahn may be backing off a little bit. He was pushing for them $50 billion in stock buybacks, and their board saying no. They did buy back 14 billion shares though over the last $14 billion worth of shares.
Yeah, Icahn's not usually defeated.
Yeah,
he's a wealthy man, the wealthiest man in New York City. He's an activist investor, and he basically looked at Apple shares and said, they're cheap. Apple should be borrowing money and doing buybacks. By doing that, they wouldn't have to pay the dividend on the shares that they're buying back, because there's automatically some synergies that are created there. But ultimately, his proxy fight's going to be lost. He originally wanted a $150 billion buyback. That's not going to happen. Now, a $50 billion buyback, he's looking at Apple and seeing, well, they're kind of doing that already. And like you mentioned last week, when they announced earnings, their stock goes to 500. Apple snapped it up. When it goes to 501 and back to 500, they snapped it up. So they are being a little bit more proactive than they were in the past. With that said, they still have a ton of money in foreign accounts, which you'd have to pay a 35% tax to repatriate. It'd be interesting to see Congress do something like, say, repatriate it, but put it into an infrastructure bank, like maybe data centers, and you have to go out and lend that money to new companies who create data centers. It would be very interesting if Congress could figure out a way to get Apple to invest that overseas money.
That's good. You have my vote, Rob.
I know.
Thank you.
But that's why it'll never happen.
Thanks, Rob. We'll talk with Rob once again at 9:15 for Winners and Losers on Wall Street. James.